Hi cuties, welcome to my hot rod curl set tutorial. I'm going to show you today how to curl your hair with these bendy hot rod rollers. They're made of rubber and wire and you can do lots with them and they heat up. And I'm going to show you how to achieve this look with a bit of a brush out as well. So I hope you enjoy the tutorial and please do tag us in your pictures, hashtag #CutiesTV and at the Keux Vintage Salon and parties on Instagram, because I want to see your results as well. So take care and enjoy this tutorial. And I'm going to use these amazing hot rods, which you can see in my bruised and battered case that I've had for years. These are Nicky Clark ones. And I also have some super vintage ones for spares, which are Clairol, kind of super 80s ones. And I'm going to show you in detail what they look like in a moment. They are just heating up while I prep my hair. So I recommend you plug those in a good 20 minutes or so if you can before you're going to pop them in your hair so they get really, really hot. And you'll see when I use them in a bit that they get quite hot to handle. But you want that heat in them to make sure that you get your really good curls. So the good thing about these hot rods is that they are super quick, and so much quicker I find than putting in obviously a wet set, but also curling your hair with tongs. So I love that I can do a quick curl set in the morning, leave them in, do some other bits, and then take them out and brush, and I find it quite a quick process. You wouldn't want to sleep in them, they're really hard rubber and wire, so they're quite uncomfortable, so they're not really for overnight, but good for a quick set in the morning. So I'm just going to talk through the products that I'm going to use to prep my hair. So my hair was washed yesterday morning, so it does need a little pep up in terms of volume, just because my hair does get quite greasy quite quickly. So I'm just going to use a dry shampoo and I'm going to just place that in my hairline. This one that I'm using is from Wilko's, so you'll know Wilkinson's if you are British, and I love this one because it doesn't leave that white residue that some of the other brands do, which is kind of good when you want to hide your roots, but that's not really what I want to do at the moment. And you can see that's visibly created a bit more volume in my hair because it's sort of taken away the grease, so that's going to be really good for the finished set as well. Just rub that in so it's not sitting on the hair, it's soaking up any excess oil. And then next I'm going to put my heat spray on. So at the moment I'm using Tresemme Keratin Smooth. This is a heat protection spray, and just going to generously put that mostly around the ends because that's where the heat gets trapped. I don't want to put it too much around my roots for weight. And then next I'm going to use a curling mousse. So this is Colour Brilliance Mousse Super Hold by Silhouette Schwarzkopf. We use a lot of Schwarzkopf in the salon, and this mousse is great because it'll really hold the hair in the curl. But the most important thing is that I don't want to put too much in the hair so it doesn't go kind of 80s sort of crusty curl. So I am just going to work that through my hair like this. Make sure I get some at the front because I need to hold at the front. Another handful. And then I'm going to work in next sections down. Make sure I really work it through the hair. Obviously you can use a heat setting spray or whatever you normally use for curl setting, for dry curl, heat curl setting. I wouldn't necessarily use like a proper setting lotion, like the really wet setting lotion that you'd use for a wet set for this, because it's going to make the hair too wet. So I'm just going to take my comb, just brush through that just to evenly spread the product. I'm also just working my fingers through the hair to make sure that it's not still wet, because if it's wet when you roll your hair into the curlers and it stays wet at the core of that curl that you've created, then it's not going to dry, and when you take it out the hair's still going to be wet and it will drop straight away. So we don't want to ruin all our hard work by the hair still being wet when you take it out. So I'm just going to put a little bit through the ends because I can feel this product in there. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got my parting exactly how I want it. I'm going to do this curl set on the side so we can create lots of volume at the front. So I can just comb my hair straight backwards, and in order to, sometimes, you know, your hair will fall quite nicely into your parting. If you want to force a parting where it isn't normally, just take the end of your comb and draw along the scalp where you want it to be. And I'm just going to do a slight diagonal on that. I don't want that much weight at the back there because it's going to kind of look uneven when I've finished. So I'm just going to even it out a bit there. So making sure that my hair, like I say, is dry. You might need to give that a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to start curling the hair. This is the super quick and easy bit. And in terms of how much hair you take for each section curling, it depends on the kind of look you want. So I use these kind of rod curlers for 20s curl sets sometimes, in which case we would want to take a really thin slice and curl tons of sections separately with the curling rods, and that's why when you probably need 2 packs, because that's going to create a much tighter curl. But because I'm going a bit of a looser, kind of more volumized, late 50s kind of curl set, then I'm going to take slightly bigger sections. So I'd say probably about 1 inch and a couple of inches, so 1 inch across there and a couple of inches back. Okay, I'm getting my first rod. And this is pretty hot, so this is what they look like when they come out. And I'm starting about, you can see I've got different lengths of hair there. You see that little bit coming up. You see my blue hands, my freshly washed, freshly coloured hair is transferring. So I'm going to start where the shortest length of hair is, and you're going to see why in a minute. And I'm just going to gently curl that round. And I want to do that really nice, quite neatly and carefully, because I don't want a twisted end, which is going to affect the final look. And then I'm just going to use my rat tail comb just to pop those ends in. We don't have to do this for every one, which takes a little bit longer, but it certainly does help for those shorter bits, because we need to make sure that they neatly go into the rod. There we go. And I've put that quite tightly against the scalp and just curl it inward like that. So the great thing is they just sit there, we don't have to pin them. So that's quite nice and quick to use. So I'm just going to repeat that process all the way down this section. If you've got a fringe, you can obviously leave your fringe out and just work behind it. Carefully wrap that hair around. There we go. Starting a little bit lower, I didn't get too much hair sticking out then, that's better. There we go. And then we're just going to carry on. And this is my last and final one. I managed to do that really well with just 1 pack. So my other pack I was heating I didn't need, and that is my last and final one. Just going in, and you'll notice that I've been tucking the ends in, and either using my comb or my fingers. And acrylic nails, or stick-ons as these are quite useful for this actually, because the length lets me pop little ends in there. So you'll notice that I've been doing that all the way through, because if your ends are crooked and not round, bent really beautifully around the curler, then you're going to get little crooked sticky out ends when we curl it out. So that is my gorgeous glamorous finished look for this stage. And you can pop a bit of spray on that if you want to, but of course we've got the mousse in, so that's all setting. So it's quite neat and tight to my head. I'll just show you around the back. And we just need to let that cool now, and I would say 20-30 minutes minimum. That's taken me a few minutes obviously to do the whole set, and I can feel that these are cooling down at the front. But what you want to do is just keep feeling them and making sure that you can't feel any residual heat whatsoever coming through from the colours into the hair. And once you're convinced that that's completely cool, then you can take them out. So let's let it cool. Okay, so they are all completely cool now, so all I'm going to do is start taking them out, which is simple as this. And you can see I've got a super tight curl there, so it's really worked. I'm just going to take all of these out. Okay, so there you can see I have very, very curly hair. So I'm just gonna run my fingers through that initially, just to break up the curl a little bit. And as you can see, it just gets bigger and bigger. Really 80s. You can tell why these curlers were popular in the 80s, because you get that 80s perm look. So that's a lot of hair. We're not gonna leave it like that. I always say to customers in the salon when they see this is the next stage, I say, it's all a process, don't worry, it's not gonna look like this in the end. So I've worked through all of that, and then what I'm gonna do next is take my boar bristle brush, which is this one here, and I'm just gonna start to brush through my hair in a downward motion, repeating that downward motion over and over again in the same direction, so that I can start to break down those curls a little bit so they're not so crazy. And when you're first doing your first brush outs, don't be too shy with brushing. As long as you've prepped your hair with the right products and you've really let it cool and dry, your vintage curl set will really withstand a great deal of brushing. So don't be afraid to keep brushing. You're not gonna lose that beautiful curl, you're just gonna smooth it out a little bit, especially if you're using the right brush. So I could just, keep this really simple and let that natural curl set be, if you like, from just doing a continuous brush out, which would be absolutely fine. But I really just like a lot more volume at the top, and to define those curls a little bit more. So once I'm happy that I've brushed that through, I'm gonna put a bit of back combing in the top so that I can start to sculpt this area into a bit of a bigger curl set. So I'm gonna take my rat tail back combing brush, my comb, sorry, and start with this section here because I want a really high lift at my fringe. So I'm just going to take that front section, just a little slice of it, pretty much the similar bit that we popped in the rollers earlier. And I'm gonna start back combing. And as you know from my other videos, back combing needs to stand on end, and then you've done enough. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of spray. I'm using Sexy Hair Flash Dry Thickening Hairspray, and I'm just going to pop a little bit in there as I go, just to make sure that really cements that height. So I'm going to grab the next section, and I'm going to link that to the previous section and back comb again. And linking it rather than back combing each section separately really does help create that volume, because it really bonds the hair together as one section. So really I'm just taking probably the equal bit from eyebrow to eyebrow. This is the front section that I'm going to work on shortly. So I'm actually just gonna pop a bit more spray in there, and I'm just gonna leave it up. It actually stays up on its own. If your hair's a bit heavier, you can always place a clip here, just to really keep that. I'm not gonna leave it that high, but I just don't wanna, I want it out the way and keep that height while we're working on the other sections. So now what I want to do, I can either decide to curl the hair out or in. So simple technique, doesn't matter which way you're going to do it, for the rest of your curl set, is to use the palm of your hand and comb the hair around the palm of your hand, depending on which direction you want it to go. So this would be if I wanted my hair to flick outwards, like so, or alternatively I can have it go inwards by repeating that same process, taking my hand and brushing the hair over it like that. Do apologise about my blue hands, I've just dyed my hair, so it transfers onto my hand. So as you can see, we're starting to get that kind of curl set shape there, and I just want to define that a little bit more. So I'm going to use my fingers to create the shape that I want. you see? Starting to follow that kind of page boy look. And then I'm just going to take the next sections of my hair and do that same inward brushing motion to allow the hair to connect and create that lovely shape that I like. Don't be afraid to then keep going over other sections. As I say, it will withstand a lot of brushing. And then round the back, take my section at the back and just repeat that same process. And go back to the front again and reconnect that. You'll know as you get to know your own curl sets, your little techniques for teasing and playing around with that. And I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. Brushing inward, using my hand to make sure I've got that curled under, and repeating that at the back. This sort of look does kind of help if you've had a like a scoop page boy or a midi kind of cut, whereby your hairdresser has cut a bit of a scoop at the front of your hair here, and then that helps to create that lovely page boy look. But you don't have to, but it does help if you curl your hair like this quite often to have it cut a little bit like that. And with this side, I tend to like it behind my ear. And now we're going to go back to this section here and just obviously, oh, take my clip out, don't forget that, you don't want to brush through that. And all I'm doing is smoothing underneath, and the reason I'm using the ball bristle brush is because it doesn't push all the way through the back combing. What it does is just brushes the surface of the hair really, so it allows you to keep that height in, not ruin your back combing. So I'm just using the palm of my hand to keep that height so that we don't lose it with my curl set. And then what I want to do with this section is start to twist it in the opposite direction so that when I lay it down, I get that lovely little flick going back, and it kind of gets a nice definition in my hair. So I need to just play around with that a bit to make sure it sits right and looks right, and your hair will probably fall differently to mine when you do this, so you'll just have to have a little play around with the kind of techniques I'm using here to get the look that you want, so you can tease with your fingers. All I'm doing really is trying to define those curls a bit, so there's a bit of a wave. And just go with what your hair's doing. I often think that's the way to do it with curl sets. It's never gonna necessarily do the same thing in my hair than it will yours. You just get a feel for different techniques that I'm using. I just want to link that section there. I'm just going to use my finger to push the rest of that hair together there. And you can see that's starting to take shape. I'm actually dragging a little bit of hair forward from the back just to get a bit of a thicker curl there, a bit of a thicker wave, sorry, so it looks a bit more substantial. I'm just being very gentle, holding each section of the hair quite firmly so that I can continue to brush it from that section downwards and it doesn't ruin what I've done up here. So I'm being quite firm, holding that there. And you can of course put clips in place if you want to keep things in place. So I can pop a clip here if I wanted to, and that can also do the same thing to help it hold in place if you need to. I'm going to use my comb a little bit. And that's starting to take a bit more shape. And don't be afraid to go back over sections if you're not quite happy with it. So I really want to make sure that I get that curl how I want it. There we go. And I've lost, with the playing around there, I'm just going to put a little bit more back combing in because I've just lost some of the height. And I think, you know, I want to show you this entire process because there's quite a lot of tweaking that goes back and forth with curl sets to get them that perfect polished look. So it's okay to keep going back over and working them. So that's starting to get the kind of shape I want, a bit smoother, and I can obviously play around with that a ton, but you tend to see those are the general techniques for playing around with it, brushing it out, using your fingers, using combs, brushes, all of that kind of thing to get that final look. So when you're happy with that, and I might play around with it a little bit more, but just so that you get the general idea, I'm just gonna kind of get that bit connected. You can see that's a height there. I like my curl, my kind of page boy around here. That sat really nicely. And I might have a little play around with this a little bit more. But you generally get that feel for that kind of wave shape. So I'm just going to spray that now. And be generous with your spray. I like to spray underneath. And that is my volume sort of 50s, slightly Marilyn Monroe curl set tutorial for hot rods. As you can see, there are a ton of curls in there, so you can achieve a lot of volume. And with all of those curls, you can do a lot. You can brush them out like you've seen me do over and over again, have a play around with it. And this will genuinely last you a day or 2, 3, depending on the type of texture that your hair you've got. Watch me on Instagram and you'll probably see, if you go back on the feed, what it looks like day 2, day 3, if I can keep it in. So I hope you enjoyed this hot rod curl set tutorial, and don't forget to subscribe and to also watch the rest of our videos for lots of other vintage hair and makeup tutorials. Take care, cuties. Till next time, have an amazing week.